Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of the Independent Podcast. My name is Fernando Garcia and I'm here with Magdalena Grace. Magdalena is a transformational microdosing coach and plant medicine advocate. Magdalena, thank you so much for being on my podcast here. And hopefully, did I say everything right in terms of your title?
Yes, you did. Sometimes I even say I'm a plant medicine woman. However, I'll explain why I love the word advocate here as we talk.
Perfect. Well, tell me a little bit about your background. I always like to get an idea of where'd you grow up, who you were growing up, how you got to this position of where you're at, and to becoming a coach and plant medicine advocate.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, it's been a journey. Let me tell you, many lifetimes in a lot of ways. But I grew up on a farm in Iowa, which I think already got me to the point of understanding nature and my love for the farm that I grew up on, and just Mother Earth, and getting in the dirt and pulling out the weeds and helping out on the farm. I had lots of chores. And at the same time, I also was raised by a single dad. And so it was a very interesting childhood that I'll come back to later. I had probably one of the more traumatic childhoods in my community. Grew up in a small town, but my mom was a schizophrenic. And so she left me literally from day one. I was born in a mental institution hospital and taken from her. So my abandonment stuff started at a very young age. And I went on, however, in spite of that, to become, a straight A student, went to college, student athlete, full ride, small college in Iowa. Yeah. Nothing like big time, but it was beautiful to be able to come out into my 20s. And I got into sales right away. And I loved sales because it also reminds me of farming, going back to planting seeds, building relationships, all of that kind of stuff. So I was very fortunate. I made like 6 figures in my first year in selling real estate, but I was also very much into fitness, having been a student athlete. So I landed in coaching, like actually at age 21. I was a running coach. I had become a marathoner and really, really fast, and was on a racing team. And so I was in this space of coaching right then and there. And I loved it so much. It was one of those things where it was more a hobby. And I recognized, I don't care if I get paid for this. This is amazing. So to keep a really long, circuitous path story short, because I got out of real estate when the recession happened. And I actually lost everything. I had 3 real estate related businesses. And at that time, it actually inspired some of the trauma from my childhood, and I didn't even know it. So I went on this path. I decided to go into full-time health and fitness, became a mom, became a wife. All of that was a lot because, again, I didn't really have the best examples of marriage, and I didn't even have a mom, as a kid. And so that all led me down a dark night of the soul path, we'll just say. And even though I spent about 17 years total coaching health and fitness, it was more body mind stuff. It was about eating, nutrition, kitchen cleanouts, grocery store tours. And I got all that, but I was really stuck in my head, and really more, as I would say, more sales focused, masculine dominant focus, go, do, because I feel like our society really promotes that, right? More consumerism, more of everything. And when the pandemic hit in 2020, I was really dead inside. I was making tons of money as a sales coach. By that time, I'd gotten out of the health and fitness industry, and my marriage was falling apart. My health was falling apart because I became a binge drinking workaholic, sucked into social media hours of every day, and not working out, not taking care of myself, putting everybody else first, being all things to all people. So you see where I'm going with this.
Right.
I hit my own version of rock bottom at the end of 2020. I had lost both my parents, my brother, back to back. I had lost a lot of friends to suicide and addiction, and I never processed their grief. I never took time to heal and to really take time to put my oxygen mask on. So it caught up to me. And at that point, someone said, hey, you've tried psychotherapy, you've tried grief counseling, you know all of the things, you got to do something different. You got to get into your heart space. You got to heal that trauma. You got to heal that grief. And the only thing that I think really ultimately could work for me with where I was at was deep dive plant medicine with psilocybin, ayahuasca, silvahuasca. I never, partook in anything that wasn't plant-based medicine,
Right.
like no LSD. I've worked with sassafras a little bit, but ultimately I came back to my truth. I could remember who I truly am. I went under with the medicine. It, shuts off the mind, got me into my body. And sure enough, after about 50 deep dives, a little extreme.
Wow.
I don't recommend that for anyone, but I really went all in. I spent multiple 5 figures to save my life and to release the trauma, to understand it, to forgive it, to really cry. I cried oceans of tears because I had become so numb. I wasn't even crying, in 2020. And so it brought me back to more balanced feminine, masculine energies, more love, more compassion, more heart centered. And then to honestly forgive a lot of myself and a lot of people in my life from my childhood that I never forgave and was always kind of holding on to pain and resentment. And so the plants spoke to me as I went through that path, helped my husband as well. And we decided now that it's becoming more accepted and more open and out there. And I really remembered who I truly am, which is a mind, body, spirit healer, to help people align the body and the mind, but also have a spiritual connection with themselves, whatever that means. For them. And then also with the medicine. So I wanted to be out there as a light worker, as a healer, as a teacher, and an advocate, because I've also seen a lot of, I'm just going to say it, really bad, unsafe ceremonies and experiences with, so-called shamans and a lot of people that'll go fly to Costa Rica or South America and have terrifying traumatic experiences. And so I want to also advocate for the safety and the sacredness of the medicine. So now I'm a microdosing coach, and with my background, I've coached 10,000 people in health and fitness and daily habits and change. These are not magic pills or lotions and potions that you just consume and go about your day. There's a way to do it in a almost ceremonial healing way that can help you in all facets of your life. And so I'm just really excited to share.
Awesome. Now explain what is microdosing? Well, how does that separate itself from other ways?
Yeah. So thank you, because I understand a lot of people don't know what that is, but it's out there, right? There's a lot of research and all of that. So there's micro and there's macro. So micro is usually, and there may be different opinions on this, but my expertise and my training, my knowledge is 500 milligrams of a sacred plant medicine substance. It could also be, in fact, I have some right here, and this is a legal tincture bottle. So you can also use drops. It's like an herbal tincture. And I work with both, but they're small doses to really just open your heart and work with your body, work with your mind to slowly, incrementally become part of a daily habit that usually after 3 to 6 months, in a perfect world, you'll have lasting results. And then macrodosing is usually a super duper high therapeutic dose that's helping you be like laying down in a safe setting, of course, only. I don't believe in recreational use at all, but working with a guide to kind of guide you through a 4 to 5 to 6 hour experience. Whereas the microdosing is, you can function fully and you don't go on a trip.
Yeah. Nice. What, when do you, is plant-based medicine, is it something that, because, when I talk to it about with other people have never done it, or obviously there are people who are very hesitant. They hear plant-based, they think hippie drugs, they have all these prejudices or misconceptions about it.
Understandable. Yeah.
But you kind of know, I think this person could really benefit from it. They're just not there yet. Would you say that the plant almost needs to call you, in a sense that there almost has to be a calling internally for you to go after it, or to seek it, I guess you can say?
110%. I love how you said that, because, the most important things in life, I believe, are seeking you even you don't know it. Like I didn't know it. It's not something that you do casually. It's not something, oh, hey, my buddy's doing it, so I guess I think I'll go, I don't want to miss out, FOMO, right? It's not
right.
at all. And it's not for everyone. You really got to be mentally, physically, spiritually committed, because it's going to change your life, and it could bring something up that was repressed, that could awaken so much trauma and so much pain that, again, if you don't do it with support, it can be really, really scary. There's a great documentary I'll recommend before I forget, called The Wisdom of Trauma by Gabor Mate. He, with that, and then there's a book, How to Change Your Mind, that talks about the true history of, and again, I don't like psychedelics because that's like what you said. You notice I said plant medicine.
Right. Yes.
A reason, because as soon as someone says here's psychedelic, they think 60s and getting high and flower children and woohoo, not. And I'm a hippie in a past life, so I'm totally down with that.
So, yeah.
But I'm not down with the recreational prejudgments that you talk about. So people have got to do the research, and if they're feeling curious, make sure they really are feeling called, because it's not something that is a hobby or just a fly-by-night thing to try out.
Now, are there also people who are maybe under certain prescription medications that should stay away from plant medicine before? I mean, like if they're on some kind of psychotic kind of, I don't know the exact term, but are there people out there that should say, hey, maybe you should wean off that first before you start looking into plant medicines?
Yeah, and that's why I also came into the picture, because a lot of people are doing the medicines that probably shouldn't. Because if you're on any SSRIs, which is basically those antidepressants and anxiety meds that are inhibiting the serotonin receptors inside, or if they're on, definitely like psychotic drugs or anything like that, if there's schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and they definitely could not do ayahuasca, for example, and there's certain medicines they can't do. However, there are certain medicines that they probably could really benefit from, again, with the proper guidance. I turn away people with those kind of experiences. However, if they're on some basic antidepressants and anxiety meds, because of my background, having coached 10,000 people, I can coach them and prepare their body, help them get off of those medications, and then get them into the plant medicine space. Because if they have those, they sort of deaden the gut brain, and they can block the medicine, or they could have some kind of intense trip, if you will, and be even worse off for it as opposed to better.
Wow. What are there any? Have you seen any outside of somebody's healthy, doesn't take any of those SSRIs? Have you ever experienced or seen somebody who's had bad side effects from plant medicine? Is it something that, if somebody was to come to you and say, what are the side effects, or what should I be worried about? I'm healthy, I don't take any medications. Should I potentially be worried about anything?
Well, that's a great question. I'm going to give you a broad view answer and then kind of come back to why I say it's not for everyone. Number one, if you go and sit with someone and they don't offer up any integration support, integration has got to be a part of the process. Number one, I don't care how healthy you are, you shouldn't go sign up for that ceremony. Same thing with microdosing. It can be scary. You can have anxiety attack. You can have something come up, and if you don't have the tools or the guide or the support, don't do it. You could become worse before you come better. I have had terrifying experiences because I was sitting with people who weren't really setting up a safe space. And even when I started microdosing, I didn't have a coach or a guide, and I had a terrifying experience. So I stopped, and I'm only on a thyroid medication, but there was so much that I didn't understand or know, because we come from a pharmaceutical society, right? Popping your pills every day. Or the reason I left the fitness industry is everyone's just looking for a magic pill or a quick fix, right? A shake, a lotion potion where they can lose 10 pounds yesterday. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So this is not a shortcut. This is not a just one and done. You got to have support, whether it's a counselor, whether it's an integration coach like me. You're also going to have to work with that body. The central nervous system gets really impacted during a ceremony. And even with microdosing, there can be a detox effect. There can be some stuff that comes up that if you're not also following proper nutrition protocols and working with your gut brain, you could have some diarrhea, loose stools. You could have some purging that you're like, whoa, I don't know what this is all about. And usually it's actually a good sign if you've ever done a detox or a cleanse. Those kinds of things you got to be aware of. But again, if you do it thoughtfully, if you do it for the right reasons, and you have a guide, a mentor, or a teacher, or support, or counselor, it's like the best therapy. Like they say, one deep dive can help you. It's like worth 200 hours of psychotherapy. I had one client who did just 2 deep dives with us, and she had the biggest breakthrough that she's been working on for decades with her father wound. And now she's off her antidepressants. She's not addicted to alcohol anymore. She's completely fine and doesn't need to do another ceremony unless, of course, maybe she has other goals in mind. So again, that's all very important stuff to really be ready for whatever is unveiled as well. If you're not ready mentally or emotionally, I wouldn't do it.
Nice. You bring something up a lot where you're talking about your gut. A lot of times we talk about like the head, the heart, but now we're starting to hear a lot about how important the gut plays. And you even used the term the gut brain. Can you delve into that, how important our gut is?
It's paramount. I'll share this. This is part of my story. Going back to in utero, in my mother's womb, because of all the stress, the shock therapy, all of the stuff, I was born with digestive issues. Okay. Those digestive issues never got resolved. And there was a lot of, from a spiritual realm, there's a lot of shame and guilt that is housed in our gut brain, our stomach, our intestines. And if it's not healed, you could have digestive issues your whole life. You could be drinking Miralax and again, not getting to the root cause. The gut brain is also where 80% of our serotonin, our happy neurotransmitters, are used for this brain. So a lot of people with depression, and I was that person until I discovered, I had leaky gut syndrome. And this was not until I was 30, and this was with a naturopath. The naturopath said, well, this is why you're depressed. This is why you get off coffee, get off sugar. Let's heal the gut brain. And sure enough, I was so much better. I was like a new person once I healed that gut brain. And then the other kind of like thing that to be aware of is there's a lot of autoimmune diseases now in the world. All of them start with a bad gut. The gut brain hasn't been healthy and nourished, and both from a physical and a spiritual standpoint, in my opinion now, you're always going to be either constipated. Sorry, I talk about poop, so I hope that's okay.
It's okay.
But you can be constipated, and then you can also have the other, which I was back and forth between loose stools and diarrhea and constipation, and that set me up for the autoimmune disease that I do actually still have now. And it's the main cause of depression, anxiety. And I believe a lot of people don't want to talk about it because it's kind of gross to talk about. But if you also don't have a healthy gut, the plant medicine, that's where it's going first. That's where it's wanting to help work through and heal you. A lot of people think, I just want to fix my brain. I must be, a bad person. I have depression, anxiety. I need to fix this. Something's wrong with me. But it starts in the gut. And then, of course, the heart brain is the biggest brain in our body. And they all work together simultaneously. So we do have 3 brains in our body, the gut, the heart, and the head. And as a society, we're way too focused on this. Last thing is your gut. Depending on who you talk to, they also say that's your intuition, right? Your gut instinct. You're the way you perceive the world. And so if you have a lot of shame, guilt, that you're still carrying in there and your digestion is off, you're going to have a hard time trusting others as well as trusting yourself. You won't trust the decisions that you make, and you could live in fear as a result.
That's I think I'm hoping that as society we're starting to realize that more and more how important our gut is, because the food we eat, which is so processed, and from such a young age we're eating it, by the time we're in our 40s, it's done a lot of damage that we don't even know of.
Oh my gosh, you hit the nail on the head. I was 42
Right.
when I was a binge drinking workaholic, hating myself and realizing my digestive issues were still playing a little role in my life from the spiritual sense, the shame and the guilt from in utero all the way through my childhood. Your brain is still farming until you're 30, by the way. So even if you have traumas in your 20s, a lot of veterans, right? A lot of people, a lot of times sexual assault, that's a big one we see with a lot of our clients. If you have all that trauma and you've never resolved it, a lot of it is blocking your gut brain. So it's really important when you go to plant medicine to know that it's going to help you work with that. And that's why those traumas can come back up, because the gut brain is communicating here finally and working here to say, hey, it's time for you to let that go. It's time for you to love yourself and forgive yourself and others, to heal. So we want you to have as good of access to the gut brain as possible, because some people can block the medicine and not have an experience. And usually it's because they've had too many medications or their diet is really, really bad. So we have people follow a nutritional protocol before and after to really ensure that they get the most out of the medicine for their body and their mind.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to talk about too, what a lot of people worry about with plant medicines is the legal barriers of it. What are some of those legal barriers, if you don't mind talking a little bit about it? And
and I am admittedly putting myself out there, right? But there's I've been on so many podcasts, and so many plant medicine people are open, and even Gabor Mate himself. Now, granted, he's in Canada, but a lot of people are talking about it, and I think it's slowly making a comeback. Some states are decriminalizing it. So what does that mean? Decriminalization. And by the way, I have petitions. If you're here in San Diego and you want to come to my house and sign, we're working on that so that basically it lightens the load. It's not a focus of the police. It's not a focus of the quote unquote laws. But yeah, if you have most of these medicines, now, like I said, I have a legal one, so I can happily share that with people. But yeah, at any point in time, someone could get in trouble. But I have a mushroom shaman who's been shipping stuff for 20 years, and he's only gone to jail once. So I consider that a pretty big win, if you ask me. But at the end of the day, they're starting the legalization process in Oregon. They're legal in Colorado. There's a prediction that by 2025, psilocybin will be fully legal everywhere, which I have some really big concerns about. But at the end of the day, as long as you are with someone who's protecting the medicine and protecting you, I say that's a win-win. That's the most important thing. I see what's happened to cannabis, and unfortunately, I just don't want that to happen for the other medicines, because there's a lot of people who get addicted to cannabis and use it as an escape like alcohol. You could technically do that with these medicines as well. So I just really implore people to seek out someone who's using them safely, and also know that, yes, you are taking your chance with the law. However, I will say I think the medicine protects us. So
perfect. Well, and so there's a lot of differences out there. You brought up psilocybin, you brought ayahuasca, DMT, mush. Are those all from the same family, or are those separate? And do you typically recommend, like, psilocybin is, for example, really good with this, ayahuasca is good with this? Is that kind of how it works? Can you explain that maybe a little bit?
Yeah, and I only work with 3 medicines. So ayahuasca, and this one actually is microdosing. This is legal. This does not have DMT. This is the Cappy vine. So the DMT is what, at least in our country, is what makes ayahuasca illegal. But this is phenomenal. Changed my life with microdosing. So if someone doesn't want to go for a deep dive, I highly recommend they reach out to me and give that a whirl, especially since it's legal. But I don't recommend ayahuasca for just anyone. The actual full blown ayahuasca, that is definitely, you can't be on any medications, maybe blood pressure, but no mental health medications. Those are contraindicating, and you could have a terrible experience. So that's more for, I say, people who are really ready to heal, deeply rooted traumas, addictions, who are really, really committed to having the deepest, darkest stuff revealed. But at the same time, you can't heal what you can't feel. You can't heal what you can't name. A lot of people are walking out numb in the world and on pharmaceuticals or alcohol addiction or whatever, because they're not feeling. They want to be numb. So if you're done being numb and you don't have very many medications that you're on, ayahuasca, again, depending upon the group, and I've sat with some not so great groups, so just beware that not all groups and not all medicines are created equal. So I'd love to be a resource for people, and I have some great referrals. Psilocybin, I say, is really ideal for maybe people who are on more medications, but who want to get off, who have maybe some deep grief, need for forgiveness, really ready to have the opportunity to fully let go and just to cry and to connect with their dead loved ones, connecting with their ancestors, connecting with their spiritual self within, and getting really beautiful messages and downloads. I mean, either one could go, those two could go either way. It's just, I think the mushrooms, also known as psilocybin, they're there to be, I think, more, how do I say this, more open, more friendly for most people to just get real deep healing for grief, trauma. It can really work through anything and everything. And then there's also the opportunity, if they wanted to do psilohuasca, where you have a microdose of the aya and then a deep work with a heroic or macro dose of the psilocybin mushrooms. And that is actually my favorite, because you get the heart softening of the feminine energy of the aya, with the deep going under work of the mushrooms. And the mushrooms are really, I think, they both work on the gut brain a lot, but sometimes if you're with ayahuasca, you're going to be throwing up. If you don't like throwing up, then mushrooms are also probably better for you to consider. So those are the main ones that I'm recommending and that I'm experienced with.
Nice. Have you heard of, there's like a plant or a tree in Africa,
Ibogaine.
I've been hearing a lot about that one, having a lot of success with drug users. Have you?
Especially addictions. Absolutely. I wish, like my husband's from Africa, we have zero experience with ibogaine. That's if I were to sit and experience and learn from a new medicine, that would be my number one. I honestly don't know very many people that offer it at this time, but I'm looking for one. So just putting that out there for anybody watching.
All right, perfect. And what is it about, when I think about plant medicines, I mean, to me, it's almost just a no-brainer, in terms of like fixing a lot of the ills in the world. Maybe not all of them, but it could really have a fundamental shift, in our society, especially Western and American culture.
Yeah.
What to you are like the biggest barrier? Like, why isn't it, it's starting to come up, people are starting to be more open, but is there something out there that you go, man, this is what's really hindering it from really taking off? And should it take off? I don't know. Should it?
I know, gosh, because part of me, I'm going to answer that last part. Should it take off? Part of me is it's too soon. We do got to have more light workers, more healers, more teachers really committed to the safety and the sacredness of this medicine. Because I don't, again, agree with big pharma or the FDA approving it and trying to monetize it or doing what they did with the cannabis industry. Because we are a society that's addicted to quick fixes and to escapes. And so it's kind of a chicken or the egg, situation, because I want to help more people heal, come back to their truth, come back to their personal sovereignty, instead of being victims to their circumstances or looking outside themselves for their answers. That's what the medicine did for me. Really, really shed me of a lot of that codependency of our society, our culture, in my marriage, all sorts of stuff. Right. So it's a really hard one to know the divine timing of it, because I think there's also a karmic situation here. These medicines are sacred. They're millions or billions of years old, again, depending on what you believe or who you believe and all of that kind of stuff. They have so much wisdom to teach us, but I'm afraid if they're abused and turned into, I know a lot of scientists are doing all these studies and they're like changing the molecules and they're creating these pills and creating these new potions. And I'm like, stop, please, just stop. They're perfect as they are. This is not a money scheme. This is not a big pharma, how can I monetize it scheme. That's my biggest concern, because then people could get really, really hurt. I've seen people do ceremony, and this is third degree of separation, but someone would go to ceremony and then they would go and commit suicide.
Wow.
Because they didn't have the proper support and guidance. Again, this is not a supplement protocol, guys. This is not anything that's just for mental health. This is first and foremost a spiritual health thing. And we have proof and evidence that the Vatican, the churches, a lot of organizations, when Richard Nixon shut things down, it wasn't just because of the hippie high. It was actually because they saw, as government and institutions, we can't control people anymore because they're coming back to their personal true sovereignty. And that's a big deal. So that's why all of those reasons, I'm just kind of like cautiously optimistic, but just holding on to my seat and my hat and just being of service in the way that I'm of service, and hoping and praying that they don't screw it up and destroy the medicines and destroy people along the way.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Magdalena, I'm going to be wrapping it up here, and I really appreciate you coming on to my podcast and talking to people about this plant medicine, because, I like to look at things, my podcast talks a lot about politics, issues going on, and I want, and, I call it the independent because I look at things from not right or left, but from just a common sense, independent perspective. I really think, psychedelic, and I'm going to change my words. Plant medicine is not for everybody, but it can definitely, if it's calling you, for anybody listening, if it is calling you, please reach out to Magdalena. I will have her information out there for you. And she'll definitely help you through everything. And I hope that more and more people are looking outside of pharmaceuticals, and looking at plant-based medicine. And Magdalena, is there, how would most people contact you, reach out to you? And if there's any last words you'd like to say before the podcast ends? Oh,
thank you so much. And just to support you, just so you know, I specialize in plant medicine. So my medicines are from plants, whereas there's a lot of psychedelics that are LSD, or they're made in a lab, that they're not plant-based. So just so you know, that's my specialty, are those plants-based medicines. So you can find me on, my podcast is Healthy and Wealthy and Wise. It is a plant medicine focused podcast with Magdalena Grace. I'm also on YouTube. I'll make sure you have my link, and Instagram, as well as I have a Facebook community for my podcast that's got over 1,200 people in it. And then I have a website I'll give you. It's Microdosing for Health. It has free classes, free education every month to really inform you, again, in the safety of these medicines and my experience. And every time I'm learning something new, I'm putting it out in webinar format and then repurposing it in YouTube. And I also have a free gift for you on that site as well. Awesome. Thank you so much. Magdalena, once again, thank you for coming on my podcast, and I wish you the best of luck. I will be in contact with you. I think I'm going to take advantage of some of your services as well. So, so thank you, Magdalena, and we'll be talking shortly. Sounds beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.